Joining us to discuss the latest is Nationals MP David Gillespie. Great to see you, David. Now, there have been paddle against wind farms. There's been protests. People are realising that these windmills are going to have a negative impact on fisheries, on tourism, I guess on all sorts of recreational activities, as well as being extraordinarily ugly and inefficient. David, tell us your thoughts. What's happening up there?
Well, there's universal opposition to the concept of these offshore floating wind farms. They are a testament to absolute madness. They will become rusting hulks, an impediment to commercial sea traffic, to the fishing industry, to the blue water economy of whale watching. The whales themselves, there's 10,000 of them that will have to cope with all the seismic testing and all this seabed disruption, the chains. There's a subterranean mesh of power grids and a huge exclusion zone around it. And it's right off the northern entry into the Port of Newcastle and off Port Stephens and up almost to Seal Rocks, adjacent to two federal and state marine parks. Dotted nearby are Ramsar protected islands. It is a nature's wonderland on a worldwide scale. It's pretty rare to see something as pristine and untouched as this. But also, it affects national security because it makes our energy system more dependent on the weather. It's absolute madness, Rowan. I don't know what planet these people are on. They think they're saving the world, but they're destroying Australia's energy security, misallocating billions of dollars to these offshore companies. They've run out of places to put wind farms in Europe, so they're coming down here to test run these floating ones. And the prodigious use of steel, cement, critical minerals, like everywhere I look, it's just nonsensical. But anyhow, Chris Bowen and the Labor Party are steamrolling through, and they're about set to produce feasibility licences, and all the seismic testing and damage to whales will start.
Rita.
Now, David, we've had the coalition have a victory with The Voice. That was a hard-fought-for debate, but you staked a position, you articulated why you were in the no camp, and you gave the Australian people a clear choice, and they made that choice. Why are we not seeing that in this arena? Why are we not seeing, when it comes to energy policy, when it comes to climate change? Yes, you just made a lot of sense, but at the end of the day, you're part of a coalition that has a net zero policy as well. So how about actually giving the Australian people a clear choice between cheap, reliable energy and this renewables folly that's going to cost us a lot more than just high bills?
Oh, Rita, you and I are on a unity ticket. You're stealing all my words.
She does that, David. Get used to it, mate. Get used to it.
Yeah, no, the actual construct of net zero by 2050 is just pie in the sky. Look, unfortunately, I deal in the real world. There's been billions of euros, Deutschmarks, US dollars, English pounds, Aussie dollars. The whole world has gone crazy trying to think that in the space of 20 or 30 years, we can unhook from fossil fuels. We're still using for our total energy about 94% from fossil fuels. The only realistic way to disconnect the world's economies and advancement of human beings is to get cheap, affordable, reliable electricity. Nuclear energy is one way of doing that, but highly efficient, low emissions coal plants in Asia are powering and keeping people warm and allowing their economies to go from undeveloped to developed. Look at India, look at countries in Asia. We're doing the reverse. We advanced in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and up to now, and now we're going backwards to low energy density sources that are randomly variable, reliant on the weather or the day and night. Like, is everyone going to wake up one day and realise, hey, it's cloudy and windy across New South Wales and Queensland. It's called, a big low trough or an East Coast low. And hey, presto, everything stops working because we've run out of batteries after 4 or 5 hours, and we've run out of wind. Look, we need to keep our remaining baseload power stations operating till we get a sensible replacement for them. Either upgrade them, make them highly efficient, or go nuclear. That's the logical thing. I'm not saying I'm against renewables. I'm just saying you can't base a whole economy on renewables. They can be part of the mix. They can be like the icing on the cake, but you can't make the whole cake out of renewables.
That's a very tasty analogy there. But, David, I want to ask you about the politics of all this, a kind of a double-barreled question here. Number one, why are they proposing that these offshore wind farms go off of places like Port Stephens when you've got, the urban conurbations where that power would go? Why are they going off the coast of Manly and Wentworth and Bondi and places like that? Firstly, and secondly, does the coalition think, I know that Peter Dutton has been up to the Nelson Bay area, the seat of Patterson a couple of times in the last month. Is this going to be a big issue, do you think, in the next federal election, which could be called as soon as late next year?
Look, undoubtedly it will be, but across the country, this is the most obvious and latest canary in the coal mine, so to speak, or the latest wind tower, in nature. Look, people have realised the folly of it all, and it's going to destroy the blue water economy. There's $1 billion worth of fisheries catch coming out of this proposed area, and underneath these floating turbines, there'll be a mesh of power grids, big anchors that are huge bits of geoengineering. They're going to have to scrape the floor to put 200-tonne anchor points down. They'll rust. Imagine what would happen. It's about 1,900 square kilometres, the area, rated for 5,000 megawatts. That means 312 of these absolute giant wind floating on the waves, anchored by huge change, and then electrical cords going into the mainland. You won't be able to fish in it. You won't be able to have coal ships or fuel ships coming anywhere near it, sailing boats. The whales will be disrupted, all the electrical currents, all the clinking and the noise of the chains, let alone all the seismic testing and blowing up the seafloor to make them get solid anchors. It's just bad everywhere. Now, look, people have realised that's a problem, but so have all the people in Newcastle, who realise it's their economy. The people in Port Stephens are irate. We had between 2 and maybe 2,500 people turn up on Saturday morning. Myself and other speakers, including Barnaby Joyce, we have called it out because this is happening not just off Mile Coast and Port Stephens, it's happening down on the south coast, off Gippsland, off Western Victoria and into areas of South Australia. And hey presto, all this stuff is going to disrupt all those fishing grounds, all that traffic. The geostrategic consequences of it is the most scary thing though, because really trying to run a country based on whether it's windy or sunny.
You're 100% correct. You're absolutely.
And we are going to have, it's just bizarre that this fairy tale mirage has got as far as it's got.
Exactly. I'm going to have to jump in there, David.
Advocated for it before have changed their mind.
Yeah, exactly. Now, thanks so much, David.